April 17, 1814, the first Sunday after Easter. A Eucharistic procession traverses the streets of Turin, accompanied by hymns and a crowd of poor and wealthy alike reverently kneeling at its passage. At one point, a loud voice breaks the sacredness of the moment. "It is not viaticum I want, but food rations," comes a raucous stream from the Senate, as the nearby prison was called. A noble woman heard it, and she could think of nothing else. It didn't matter that she was young, nor that she couldn't speak perfect Italian. She had to meet this desperate man. She had to give him some coins to buy food, she thought on her way back to her aristocratic palace, a block away. Struck by that interior call, she decided to obtain permission to enter the jail with her servant. In walking through the dark corridors of the prison, however, she realized that the man was not hungry but just plainly irreligious. Soon after, she was shocked at the sight of incarcerated men and women fighting like beasts over the coins that fell from her hands as she tried to cover her eyes. It was there that she first discovered the inhuman conditions of the prison. It was there that she discovered her mission, as she noted in her diary years later. Giulia, or rather Juliette, had first traveled to the city 7 years earlier after marrying a local nobleman whom she had met in Paris, and the couple had just relocated to the Palazzo Barolo in Turin. Giulia and her husband Tancredi were no ordinary people. Born Juliette Colbert de Maulevriér, Giulia was originally from Vendée, a French department in the Atlantic Pays de la Loire, a region famous for its castles and red wines. She was the grandniece of Jean-Baptiste Colbert, former Minister of Finance under King Louis XIV, and the daughter of Marquis Édouard de Maulevriér, who owned a castle and an estate there. When the revolution started in Paris, she was only 3 years old, and her father took her and her sister out of the country, disguising them as boys, and relocated to Germany. There, he educated them in French, German, English, Latin, and Italian. As the revolution turned into terror and Jacobins put their plan to eradicate Vendéan resistance into action, the situation worsened. Her mother and little brother died in Brussels on the way to Germany, and her grandmother was guillotined in Paris. The ascent of General Napoleon Bonaparte soon after put an end to the reign of terror, but twisted the French revolutionary ideals into an ambitious plan of military conquest. Napoleon first invaded Italy in 1796 and sealed his hegemony 4 years later as he defeated Austrians in the Battle of Marengo. Piedmont and Turin remained French until 1815, when the Congress of Vienna restored the Savoyan monarchy and King Victor Emmanuel I returned from his forced exile. Tancredi Falletti, Marquis of Barolo, was the son of Turin's governor and supported the reforms that Napoleon brought to the city, from uniform taxation to the educational system and the civil code. After Napoleon negotiated a concordat with Pope Pius VII in 1801 and was voted emperor by the French Senate in 1804, Tancredi became part of his new court in Paris. The court also comprised of old French aristocrats to whom Napoleon had promised a partial restitution of properties. It was at this time that Juliette's family returned to Vendée, only to find that everything was in ruins. It was at this time that Juliette became lady-in-waiting of Joséphine Beauharnais, who married Napoleon in 1804. It was at this time that she met Tancredi. The two were married in 1806 and traveled often from Paris to Piedmont, spending time both in Turin, in the 17th century Palazzo Barolo, and the Langhe, the countryside around Alba, where her husband owned a much-beloved castle and estate in the little village of Barolo. Juliette gave herself the new Italian name of Giulia Falletti di Barolo and learned the Piedmontese dialect. At Napoleon's fall in 1814, they permanently relocated in Turin, where they remained influential figures even after the Restoration. In the 1820s, Tancredi Falletti worked as counselor for King Victor Emmanuel I, as city mayor, and as a philanthropist, sponsoring free schools for the poor, funding the construction of the monumental cemetery and organizing urban hospitals during the cholera crisis of 1835. During the same period, following her first visit to the Senate jail, his wife Giulia devoted her efforts to the reform of prisons and the education of prisoners. In 1821, she championed a new bill for the reorganization of the city's penitentiary structure. In 1834, she founded a congregation, the Penitent Sisters of St. Mary Magdalene, or Magdalenes, in support of her apostolate in prisons. Meanwhile, she untiringly welcomed poor families and orphan children in her palace, and also hosted the Italian patriot Silvio Pellico after years of imprisonment in a high-security Austrian jail because of his support for the cause of Italian independence. His incarceration in the Spielberg prison would be the subject of his diary, Le mie prigioni, My Prisons, a classic of Risorgimento literature and the later model of Gramsci's prison notebooks. After Tancredi's death in 1838, the city became the epicenter of the project of Italy's unification. 10 years later, in 1848, King Charles Albert approved a statute that made the Kingdom of Piedmont and Sardinia a constitutional monarchy, and he got involved in a conflict with Austria, the so-called First War of Italian Independence. After Piedmont's military loss, he abdicated in favor of his son, King Victor Emmanuel II, who ignited a second war of independence in the north, a campaign to free the south under the guidance of Garibaldi, and a referendum in the central regions, achieving Italian unification in 1861. In parallel with these events during the 1840s and 1850s, Turin had become an industrial city, though plagued by poverty, illiteracy, and unemployment. And at the same time, it has become a singular melting pot of radical anticlericalism and religious renewal. On the one hand, in the name of free church in free state, Prime Minister Cavour abolished and took the possessions of monastic congregations with the Rattazzi Law of 1855. On the other hand, saints of social justice left their mark in Turin. The reformer Leonardo Murialdo, the educator Giovanni Bosco, Giuseppe Cottolengo, founder of the Little House of the Divine Providence for the care of the sick, and Giuseppe Cafasso, who inspired Giulia Falletti with his work for prisoners condemned to death. The years after Tancredi's death were for Giulia a time for renewed social commitment and entrepreneurial zeal. As she became a mother to many through her care for the poor, her compassion for prisoners, and her attention to orphans, she responded to the needs of society with the strength of her faith and the ability, in her words, to see everyone with the eyes of the heart. As she inherited the estate in Barolo, she also dedicated herself to improving the quality of vineyards in the area. Coming from the wine region of La Loire, she was the heiress of a long line of winemakers near the family castle of Maulevriér and had quite a palate. The care for the countryside, which Tancredi loved, was also a way to keep his memory alive. Now, despite what we might think, her service to the imprisoned and her winemaking creativity were not two disjointed or parallel stories for her, but rather the manifold manifestations of her unique personality. Her commitment to the poor found expression in the Opera Pia Barolo, which expanded after her death in 1864 and funded not only hospitals, schools, and charitable institutions throughout the city, including some by St. John Bosco, but also the building of the St. Giulia Church in the underserved district of Vanchiglia. The multitude of mourners that filled the streets of Turin after her funeral became a faithful crowd of pilgrims visiting her tomb in St. Giulia, where her husband is now buried too. And her growing reputation for holiness has been recognized by the Catholic Church. In 2015, Pope Francis named her venerable, the first step in the canonization process. The entrepreneurial side of her story relates to the birth of the Barolo wine, one of Italy's most beloved reds. After Tancredi's death, Giulia hired the French enologist Louis Houdat to work on the family lands of Barolo, with the goal of improving the area's typical Nebbiolo grape. In tandem with the Italian enologist Paolo Francesco di Staglieno, who had studied the grape and had worked for Camillo Cavour, then mayor of the nearby city of Grinzane, Udar experimented with a new method of production, which did not halt fermentation in October, as was common practice, generating a sweet wine with the residual sugar left, but prolonged it throughout the winter, drying the wine completely and granting it a well-rounded taste. The Marchesi di Barolo's new red soon reached the table of King Charles Albert, who enthusiastically defined it as il vino dei re e il re dei vini, the king's wine and the king of wines. Charles Albert would request a yearly order of Barolo from the Falletti estate and eventually acquired his own vineyard in Verduno. His son Victor Emmanuel II later started his own production in the Fontana Fredda estate in Serralunga d'Alba. The fame of Barolo has continued to grow since then, and in 1927 its production was limited to the hills near the village. Today, the Marchesi di Barolo winery continues the vision of Giulia Falletti, thanks to the work of mother-daughter duo Anna and Valentina Abbona. Their success owes much to Juliette, a holy woman with a refined palate who saw the potential of the Nebbiolo grape, ripened it late, and crafted it into a complex red wine. She did not settle for the quick solution of a sweet wine or dolcetto, but made it ferment longer, giving it a second chance, protecting it from winter temperatures, and aging it into the full-bodied red which we know today as Barolo. "We don't need viaticum but food," a strident voice from a jail started her adventure, moving her to find her mission in life. The woman of noble birth who escaped persecution and endured the death of family members, the devoted wife who did not fear being foreign and vulnerable, the religious foundress, social reformer, and skilled wine entrepreneur who treated prisoners like royalty, could not settle for bottled-up devotion, nor for quick fixes to much deeper needs. She owned palaces, castles, and vineyards, but did not ignore the cry of the unheard. She knew monarchs, prime ministers, and patriots, but did not give in to the allure of self-righteousness. She spoke several languages, but she did not forget the unmistakable yearning for beauty that lies in every human heart, whether criminals or kings. What made her a remarkable woman and entrepreneur was her gift to see things not in dualistic terms, separating the material and spiritual fabric of our humanity, but rather as a unity. Bread alone, or perhaps a charitable donation, would fall short without a patient, authentic, and integral involvement in the life of the lowly and uneducated. Similarly, a mere eschatological answer or religious viaticum would fall short without concrete attention to contingent needs. Her faith, her courage, and her enduring freshness was born concomitantly from her habit of serving and her spiritual quest. Her story, in a way, resembles the contemporary project of the Ambrosian Refectory by top Italian chef Massimo Bottura. In gathering colleagues to cook leftovers for the poor, he asked them to make highly refined recipes from food destined for the rubbish heap, thus feeding the hunger not just of the stomach, but of the heart as well. The Barolo wine not only reflects this comprehensive idea, but also mirrors the wonderful journey of Giulia Falletti. Its late fermentation indicates the patience she always gave prisoners and the second chance vision of their ultimate potential. Its reactivated grape imitates her own path from a broken castle in La Loire to the unexpected life with Tancredi, from his death to her enduring commitment to keep his memory alive in the Langhe. Its well-rounded body echoes her full life of self-giving love, which did not sweeten or sugar up evil, but eventually transformed it into hope, a force of renewal, and a taste of redemption. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this presentation, I invite you to subscribe to this YouTube channel or to the webpage www.italianinnovators.com to receive notifications of new episodes. You can also follow me on my LinkedIn profile or on Instagram at Italian Innovators for additional materials about the show. Thanks again. Arrivederci e alla prossima.